The Starlight echoes Chapter 9, The Ghost in the Sky. The peace of Green Hills was rarely absolute, but for Shadow, the silence of the forest had become a sanctuary. He was sitting on a high, jagged ridge overlooking the valley, his new MP3 player clipped to his hip and the haunting notes of Even in Death providing a low hum in his ears. He was practicing the stillness Tom had talked about, trying to just be a building on a hill. Then the frequency shifted. It wasn't a sound at first, it was a vibration in the air. A high-pitched mechanical whine that bypassed his ears and resonated directly in his quills. Shadow's eyes snapped open, the crimson pupils narrowing into sharp slits. He knew that frequency. It was the sound of a pressurized cooling system and a long-range optical sensor. A gun surveillance drone, a sleek black and silver orb bristling with cameras and a localized pulse cannon, drifted over the tree-line. It moved with a cold, predatory grace, its red eye scanning the forest floor. Shadow didn't move. He didn't even breathe. He watched as the drone hovered over a clearing where he, Sonic, and Knuckles had been playing tag just the day before. The machine was a relic of the world that had kept him in a box, a piece of the Walters legacy that refused to stay in the past. The drone turned, its lens clicking as it zoomed in on the ridge where Shadow sat. The red sensor light swept across his dark fur. Target identified. Project Shadow. Status active. Location: Green Hills Sector 7. Shadow stood up slowly. He didn't reach for chaos energy. He didn't prepare to warp. He simply stood there, silhouetted against the bright morning sun, his expression one of calm, cold disdain. He looked at the machine, the thing that represented his origin, and realized it looked small. It looked fragile compared to the mountains and the family waiting for him at the bottom of the hill. The drone's internal fans whirred louder, a defensive posture. It was programmed to track a weapon, but it didn't know how to track a brother.
You are looking for a ghost,
Shadow said, his voice carrying on the wind, steady and devoid of the old robotic chill.
but the shadow you seek is no longer here.
With a flick of his wrist, Shadow didn't attack. He reached down and turned up the volume on his music. The heavy, distorted guitars of Evanescence drowned out the drone's mechanical hum. It was his own personal barrier, a wall of sound that defined who he was now. The drone hesitated, its logic circuit struggling to categorize a target that was simply sitting and listening to music. Shadow turned his back on the machine. He didn't run. He walked down the ridge, heading toward the smoke rising from the Wachowski chimney. He knew the drone would report back. He knew Gunn was still watching. But as the music filled his head, he realized that a lighthouse doesn't hide from the ships in the dark. It just keeps shining.
Let them watch.
Shadow murmured to himself.
Let them see what a life looks like.
Shadow didn't say a word when he stepped back through the kitchen door. The smell of Maddie's toasted sourdough was in the air, but the warmth of the house felt suddenly fragile. He could still feel the phantom heat of that red sensor eye on his back. If he told them, the peace would vanish. Tom would reach for his radio, Maddie would worry, and Sonic would want to run out there and turn the drone into a pile of scrap metal. Shadow wasn't ready to let the ghost in the sky ruin the first home he'd ever known.
Everything okay out there, Shads?
Sonic asked, sliding into his chair with a mountain of chips.
You look like you just sat through a 3-hour lecture on tax law.
The wind was brisk.
Shadow replied. His voice was steady, but he didn't sit down. Instead, he took a position by the window, his eyes scanning the tree-line.
I am merely observant.
Later that afternoon, when Maddie announced they needed to head into town for supplies, Shadow was the first one at the truck. Usually, he'd prefer to stay in the attic with his music, but today, he was a silent, crimson-striped sentinel. As they walked through the streets of Green Hills, Shadow's behavior changed. He didn't walk behind the group anymore. He stayed exactly half a step ahead of Sonic. Every time a car backfired or a heavy door slammed, Shadow's quills would flare, and his hand would instinctively drift toward Sonic's shoulder, ready to push him out of the way.
Shadow? You're kinda crowding my space, buddy.
Sonic said, trying to dodge around a sidewalk display of birdhouses.
I know I'm adorable, but I don't need a bodyguard for a trip to the hardware store.
The perimeter is wide, Hedgehog.
Shadow said, his eyes darting to a suspicious-looking van parked across the street.
Stay within my reach.
Even in the hardware store, the very place they had come to buy more glow-in-the-dark paint for his ceiling, Shadow was on high alert. He ignored the aisles of tools and instead stood near the entrance, arms crossed, staring up at the skylights. He was looking for that black and silver orb, waiting for the moment the ghost would decide to strike.
He's doing that thing again.
Tails whispered to Tom, pointing at Shadow.
The ultimate life form scowl. It's at a level 10 today.
Tom looked at Shadow, then back at the quiet, sunny street outside. He saw the way Shadow's ears were swiveling, catching every frequency. He didn't see a drone, but he saw a boy who looked like he was back in the gun base, waiting for the raid to start. Shadow felt a hand on his arm. It was Sonic. The blue hedgehog wasn't joking this time. He looked up at Shadow with a soft, concerned expression.
Hey Shadow,
Sonic said quietly.
whatever you're looking for, it's not here. We're safe, Shadow. I promise.
Shadow looked down at the hand on his arm, then at Sonic's face. He wanted to believe him. He wanted to believe that the music and the milkshakes were enough to keep the shadows at bay. He let out a slow, controlled breath, his quills flattening slightly.
I am merely ensuring the sequence remains uninterrupted.
Shadow said. But as they walked out of the store, Shadow caught a glint of sunlight off a metallic surface high in the clouds. It was gone in a second, but it was enough. The lighthouse was still on, and tonight, the lamp would be burning brighter than ever. The sun was beginning to set, painting the green hills sky in bruised purples and deep oranges, colors that usually made Shadow feel at peace. But as they sat on the back porch, the hardware store bags forgotten at their feet, the air felt heavy. Sonic wasn't bouncing his leg. He wasn't humming. He was leaning against the wooden railing, watching Shadow with an uncharacteristically serious squint.
All right, spill it.
Sonic said, his voice quiet so Mom and Dad wouldn't hear from the kitchen.
And don't give me that observant line again. You've been acting like a Secret Service agent all day. You even checked the expiration date on the milk 3 times like it was a biohazard.
Shadow stood at the edge of the porch, his back to the house. He remained silent for a long moment, the only sound the distant chirping of crickets. Finally, he reached up and paused the music on his MP3 player, letting the silence of the forest take over.
I was spotted
Shadow said, his voice barely a whisper.
this morning on the ridge. A surveillance unit. Black orb. G-series optics.
Sonic's ears pinned back instantly.
A gun drone? Here? In Green Hills?
They are tracking the project, Sonic. They do not see a family or a home. They see an asset that has moved off the board.
Shadow turned around, and the look in his eyes wasn't fear. It was a fierce protective spark.
I did not tell the others because I did not want the ghost to enter this house. I thought if I stayed vigilant, I could keep the shadow from touching the light.
Sonic stepped forward, his expression shifting from concern to a hard, determined frown.
Shadow, you can't just shoulder that by yourself. That's not how this works. If they're looking for you, they're looking for all of us. We're a package deal now.
They are dangerous, Hedgehog.
Shadow countered, his voice rising slightly.
They destroyed the base. They caused the explosion. They are the reason the music is all I have left of her. I will not let them take this from me. From you.
Sonic reached out, placing a hand on Shadow's shoulder. It was the same touch-starved sincerity that defined him, a grounding weight that pulled Shadow back from the edge of his memories.
They won't.
Sonic said firmly.
Because we aren't hiding in a lab anymore. We're in Green Hills. We've got a town. We've got a mom and dad. And you've got a brother who can outrun anything they throw at us.
Sonic looked up at the darkening sky, his eyes scanning the clouds where Shadow had seen the glint earlier.
If they want to watch, let them watch. But the second they try to interrupt the sequence, they're gonna find out why you don't mess with the Wachowski brothers.
Shadow looked at Sonic's hand, then back at his face. The tension in his quills finally began to bleed away. He wasn't a lone sentinel anymore. He was part of a formation.
What is the tactical plan then?
Shadow asked, his voice regaining its steady, calm rhythm. Sonic's trademark smirk returned, sharp and mischievous.
Step 1, we tell Dad. Step 2, we keep being loud, messy, and annoying. And step 3, I think it's time we showed the drone some real music.
Tom stood by the kitchen counter, the steam from his evening coffee drifting up as he listened to Sonic and Shadow. He didn't interrupt. He didn't even set the mug down. He just watched Shadow's face, seeing the way the dark hedgehog's eyes kept darting back to the porch door. When Shadow finished explaining the G-Series optics and the surveillance route, Tom let out a long, heavy sigh. He didn't look panicked. He looked like a father who had just been told someone was loitering on his front lawn.
All right.
Tom said, his voice calm and grounded. He finally set the mug down with a deliberate clink on the granite.
First off, Shadow, you did the right thing telling us. I know your instinct is to go lone wolf to protect everyone. But in this house, we don't do secrets. Not when it comes to safety.
He walked over to the kitchen table and sat down, gesturing for the two boys to join him.
Now, Walters and Gunn. They've got a long memory.
Tom continued, his sheriff voice taking over.
They think they have a claim on you because of how you started. But they're forgetting one thing. This isn't a government facility. This is a domestic residence in a town that doesn't like outsiders poking their noses in.
So, what do we do, Dad?
Sonic asked, his foot tapping a mile a minute.
Do we take it down? I can have the thing in pieces before it hits the ground.
No, Sonic.
Tom said firmly, holding up a hand.
If we destroy government property on the first day, we're giving them an excuse to escalate. We play this smart. We're going to let them see exactly what they're dealing with.
Tom looked at Shadow, his expression softening.
Shadow, they're expecting a weapon. They're looking for Project Shadow. Something cold. Something they can control. If they see you sitting in the yard, eating a sandwich and listening to music with your brothers, it throws their entire profile out the window. You aren't a threat. You're a kid at home.
Shadow tilted his head.
You wish for me to perform domesticity as a tactical diversion?
Not a performance, Shadow.
Tom smiled.
Just living. We're gonna make sure that Drone gets an earful of that evanescence you like. We're going to show them that there's nothing here for them to recover. You aren't lost, and you sure as heck aren't theirs.
Maddie walked in, having caught the tail end of the conversation. She didn't look scared either, she looked fierce. She walked straight over to Shadow and squeezed his hand.
We've got the local sheriff and a town full of people who think you're heroes. If Gunn wants a fight, they're going to have to go through the Wachowski first.
Shadow looked around the kitchen, at the crumbs on the table, the family photos on the fridge, and the three people who were ready to stand between him and the only power he had ever feared. The ghost in the sky felt a lot less haunting when the house was full of light.
I understand,
Shadow said, his shoulders finally dropping from their defensive hunch.
We shall show them the sequence of a family. It is a more powerful deterrent than a chaos spear.
Inside a dimly lit, high-tech command center miles away from the quiet pines of Green Hills, the air hummed with the sterile drone of cooling fans and the rhythmic clicking of keyboards. A wall of monitors cast a cold, flickering blue light over the sharp features of Director Rockwell. She stood with her arms crossed, her eyes narrowed as she watched a fast-forwarded playback of the surveillance data streaming in from the G-Series drone. The footage began weeks ago, the night the dark hedgehog first arrived at the Wachowski residence. The thermal sensors showed the heat signatures of 3 small forms and 2 larger ones, huddled together. Rockwell watched as the footage stabilized, revealing the interior through high-resolution long-range lenses. She saw the ultimate life form, a creature designed for cold, calculated efficiency, being pulled into a messy, impulsive hug by the blue one. She saw the moments in the attic, the project sitting on a bed shaped like a moon, his eyes fixed on glow-in-the-dark stars. The screen flickered to a more recent clip. Shadow was standing in the kitchen. Maddie Wachowski leaned in and pressed a light, motherly kiss to his forehead. Shadow didn't flinch. He didn't move to strike. He simply closed his eyes, his quills softening in a way the gun scientists had once claimed was biologically impossible.
Look at them.
Rockwell murmured, her voice a low, dangerous rasp.
He isn't just integrated. He's bonded.
An analyst seated below her spoke up without looking away from his screen.
Ma'am, the biometric data shows a significant drop in Shadow's cortisol levels whenever the blue subject, Sonic, is within 3 meters. They aren't just allies. They're functioning as a biological family unit.
Rockwell leaned in, her face inches from the screen where Shadow and Sonic were currently sharing a laugh over a plate of chili dogs. Her shock was evident in the slight tightening of her jaw, but it quickly melted into something much sharper. A cold, calculating smile spread across her face.
I thought we had lost our leverage when the base was destroyed,
Rockwell said, her fingers tapping rhythmically against her arm.
But look at this. Shadow has spent 50 years with nothing to lose. That made him a weapon we couldn't handle.
She pointed to the screen where Sonic was currently draping an arm around Shadow's neck.
Now he has a brother. He has a mom and a dad. He has a home with soft pillows and music.
Rockwell's eyes glittered with a predatory light.
The ultimate life form finally has a weakness. He has something he's afraid to lose.
She turned away from the monitors, her heels clicking sharply on the metal floor as she addressed the room.
Maintain the surveillance. Do not engage. We aren't going to snatch him,
she commanded.
We're going to wait. If he's become a brother to the hedgehog, then the hedgehog is the key to bringing the project back under our thumb. Every bond is just another leash.
She looked back at the image of the 2 hedgehogs sitting on the porch, unaware of the eyes in the sky.
Welcome back to the world, Shadow,
Rockwell whispered.
Let's see how well you follow orders when it's your brother's life on the line.
Rockwell has found a way to use Shadow's new heart against him. The atmosphere in the Wachowski kitchen remained warm, but Shadow could feel the invisible weight of Rockwell's gaze pressing against the window pane. While Sonic was busy trying to convince Knuckles that napkin folding was not a form of origami combat, Shadow felt a sudden, inexplicable urge to do something permanent, something that proved he belonged here, regardless of who was watching from the sky. He walked over to the mudroom, where a collection of Polaroid photos was pinned to a corkboard. Most were of Sonic making funny faces or Ozzy sleeping in a sunbeam. Shadow reached into a small drawer and pulled out a permanent marker.
Shadow, what are you up to?
Maddie asked, pausing as she wiped down the counter. Without a word, Shadow moved to the doorway that led into the kitchen. He looked at the wooden frame, then at Sonic.
The blue one mentioned a human tradition, a way to track the passage of time through physical stature.
Sonic perked up, a piece of sourdough still in his mouth.
The growth chart? Oh yeah! We haven't done one for me in months because Tom says I've officially reached maximum hedgehog height, which is rude.
Shadow stood against the doorframe, his back straight, his quills just brushing the wood. He handed the marker to Tom.
Mark the sequence. If they wish to observe me, let them observe this. I am no longer a project with a fixed expiration date. I am growing.
Tom smiled, the kind of deep, knowing smile that made the lighthouse feeling in Shadow's chest grow stronger. He stepped over, placed a level hand on top of Shadow's head, and drew a neat horizontal line on the white paint. Next to it, in steady print, he wrote, Shadow Year 1.
There.
Tom said, stepping back.
Official member of the wall.
Sonic scrambled over, grabbing the marker.
Move over, Shads. I gotta see if I've grown even a millimeter. If I'm shorter than you, the lore is broken.
As the boys crowded around the doorframe, laughing and pushing each other to get the most accurate measurement, Shadow stood back and watched. He looked at the mark on the wall, a simple black line that tied him to the house, to the wood, and to the family. He knew Rockwell was likely looking at the thermal signature of that very moment. He hoped she saw it. He hoped she understood that every mark on that wall was a tether she couldn't break.
My turn.
Tails cheered, hovering up to the frame. Shadow reached down and picked up the MP3 player he'd left on the table. He put his headphones on, the opening chords of an Evanescence track beginning to swell in his ears. He looked at the growth chart and then at his brothers. He wasn't a weapon being stored. He was a life being measured.